we're very happy to have Juna Suleiman here with her film, a very special film about her grandmother, who Juna documented for 7 years, which you will see in this film. And after the film, you're very welcome to stay for a discourse with Juna for Q&A. אתם מאוד מוזמנים להישאר לשאלות ותשובות עם הבמאית ג'ונה אחרי הסרט. הבוקר גם הסרט הוקרן במזרח ירושלים, שזה היה ממש כבוד ושמחה גדולה. This morning the film was screened in East Jerusalem to a full house of Palestinian women, which was very, very exciting. And Laura Verton from City Council is here. Thank you for being here. And we hope you enjoy the film.
זה בסדר גם לכולם לדבר אנגלית?
בסדר, בבקשה.
קודם כל אני רוצה להציג אותך, למרות שסרט מציג אותך הכי טוב שיש. ג'ונה סלימן, יוצרת, במאית, אשת קולנוע. עושה הרבה דברים ששאלתי אותה איך להציג אותה, פלסטינית גם. רציתי לומר על הסרט הזה... sorry, I forgot completely. Sometimes I don't know which language I'm in. Okay, once again, Juna Sliman, she's a filmmaker, Palestinian filmmaker, and the best way to introduce her is of course her film, and I would like to add about the film Solidi Sister, that it has won the best debut film award at Dok Aviv, and also best photography award at Dok Aviv. It was premiered at ITFA, which is like the most important documentary film festival in Amsterdam, and it has been screened all over the world.
Some places.
The most important question, how is your grandmother now?
Yeah, that's the first question, but always. Thank you, first of all, for coming here. I hope you enjoyed the film. Well, right now she has Alzheimer's, so she remembers what she, like some things not. She's not in the best, like I cannot describe it, the best physical condition, but she still has her sense of humor, that's for sure.
So of course, I'm sure the other question I'm going to ask, also everybody asks, why did you decide to make a film about your grandmother?
Okay, this film actually was written in my second year in the university with Ruben Hecker. He was my teacher then. And it was about a woman who was like very hyperactive. She wouldn't sit in the house at all. She used to use her binoculars to watch other neighbors and talk about them. And she would go outside and argue with every person in the street she wants to buy stuff from. She had a very like funny character, but also she used to make trouble and come out of it as if nothing. And I wanted to make a film about her daily life then, a documentary. It was 10 years before I started this one. She refused to be filmed. And then 10 years later I came back after trying to leave the country for good. It didn't work out. So I came back and I reminded her what I was going to do, and she said, yes, why not? I want you to leave a memory. Go ahead. So I got like camera, the most cheapest camera, DV cam I could get from a friend. It was with a single green dot all the time, and I was like a very bad photographer, very, very bad. So I said, okay, maybe I don't want to make a film. I have this inexplicable need to just go after her, to describe, to try to find out my own language when I film. What kind of immediate surrounding am I addressing? Because we were always, in our writing and in working in Palestinian film, always trying to first explain we are Palestinian, and then we expect your pathos as a viewer or for the funds to also give us money to make our films. And me myself, I was also stuck in this way of writing, that when I come to write about myself, things I've gone through or seen, they immediately go as if I have to explain first my identity. Trying to run away from that didn't work out with immigration and other stuff, like immigration. Also trying to write about something else. So I decided I'm just gonna follow her with a camera, see what comes out. And if I have something that I want to make a film, then the idea is not to become a filmmaker, is to make a film out of a process I learned. And I had a very interesting and long process with her, where it was like, for me, a private film school. And I learned a lot from it, and then it came the time where this had to become a film 2 years ago, when we started editing. So basically the idea was to capture what was going to be lost. And this is, I think, every documentarist's urge, is to capture what is about to disappear from you, about to vanish. And I had this need, and I didn't believe that I could use this to convince funds and other people, but I believed in it. I got rejected from a lot of places until this became a film with the new fund for cinema and television, who actually, unsurprisingly, very much gave this film a spirit and its own place, and they didn't meddle at all with what it's about, identity and all that stuff. So I was free doing it with little money.
That was actually one of the questions I was going to ask. First of all, I want to say that I saw it the second time now, and it's amazing how many more things now I noticed. Every little details, and it's just such a pleasure, really, so much attention. And I think that's really fascinating, like how you build her world, like her inner world, yes? Everything we learn about the outside world is only through the news, radio and television, but actually we totally focus, or you totally focus on her world, her home, her kitchen, household. And before I ask about it, I would like you to expand a bit more about your choice on the personal as opposed to the national, because as you say, it's more usual that as a Palestinian filmmaker, you would touch on some of the issues related to Palestinian identity, to the conflict, to Nakba or whatever. And your film, as if it is completely lacking it. It's somewhere, I don't know, in between the lines, or where is it, the choice, like really very strong, striking choice of focusing on the personal world of your grandmother and not touching on political issues. Yes. Can you say a bit more about that?
Yes, sure. Yes. Well, if you focus on our daily life and you film it, the political issues come out exactly as such. Politics, news, everything that is happening around us, namely happens through channels, radio and television, reading, and this is how we interact with it. This is how we also collaborate with that information. In the scene you also saw with my uncle Badda, when he how do you say, swears everybody who is connected to the revolution, which we don't have to agree with, but this is a kind of interaction that we get to have. I don't think this film eliminates the political aspect at all. I think it shows exactly how it exists in our life, because it exists as such. We are not on a front line of any danger coming from Sahel or whatever. We live in the Galilee, and our life is television and eating food and television. That's our life. And wanting to show that, and to show also how this has a long-term effect on her life, on our life in general, is seeing it happen every day. Because you chew the information, you spit the information, but what happens in the end, it's a life and death situation for her, for Hiyam. For her, she doesn't care who's going to rule Israel, Netanyahu or otherwise. For her, she already knows it's a hoax. She's already been old enough to know it's a farce anyway. So this is her specific interaction with history. The fact that she is a refugee from Bissam, this I have to eliminate, and this was totally, it was an artistic decision by all means, because the idea was that if I want to show the viewers that she was also expelled from her village Bisan, just to put it in the viewer's mouth to see that this, I didn't want to do that. It had no place in the film, as cinema, and this is why I decided it's gonna come out, because everybody who's like become, I think that trauma, expressing trauma for women, much of the time, also my mother sometimes to me, happens through cleaning, through being obsessive over house errands. So I think this is exactly how politics exists, and it's very political as well. That we are helpless in front of the television and what happens and what we get from news, and our helplessness we put into something else, and this becomes like this viewing of television, and also she becomes disinterested as time goes by, because this is exactly where politics, so to speak, exists in her life, which is exactly, it's very much political. I think it tells a lot about our daily life in general and our political involvement. And that doesn't mean it's not involvement, because the fact that it's psychological, it becomes psychological, it's a different kind of involvement.
Yeah, actually, that was also one of the things I wanted to ask you about. In one of the interviews in Haaretz, you said that you were, when you listened to an interview, you read about Chantal Ackerman speaking about her mother, and who is also was a Holocaust survivor, and she spoke about her that she actually only cleans the house and never talks about the trauma, and that you felt that it's actually the story of your grandmother.
True, actually, although I don't agree with her in any other aspect she spoke about, and her connection to the country, and how much she was willing not to talk about Palestinians at all in her visit. I love her films. I think she's an incredible filmmaker. This film was also treated in one of the articles in Haaretz. It was compared to Jeanne Delman, which was also an honor. I didn't think about that. But I think that that this was the one thing that when she said, I got immediately lit, because it's exactly, she was telling that her mother would express her feeling only by cleaning all the time, and that she thought that because this is a symptom of a Holocaust survivor to turn in your feelings on something else. And I think this is very general as well for women who are in my family, also in Palestinian society. The cleaning issue has become like there's stories about it, how clean you can get, how creatively you can go over and take all the spider nets from above, and which way to use, and this way and not that way. It becomes an issue. So for her, it's her power zone in the film as well. As long as she is working, as long as she is on top of everything in the house, she is not dead. Dead is sitting in stillness. Dead is not going to another world or just disappearing. For her, it's exactly when bad news come, and that's the helpers that are coming from the outside. I hope I answered your question.
I would just say to the film which you mentioned by Chantal Ackerman, Jeanne Delman, you probably know it, many of you. One of the important feminist films, which tells a story of a woman who also is cleaning all the time, but actually in the end, she kills. No, I was waiting, like in your film, when something like that, like this explosion comes, but it never comes.
You didn't feel that there was an explosion in the film?
Not.
Okay, I think that it never comes because it's how do you say איזון כוחות? Balance of power balance between despair and hope for her. Like I saw when working with her, when living with her, I also lived with her before many times. Every time I ran away from my home, I was living with my grandmother, and she has a systematic way of dealing. Like she feels despair, she makes it much more theatrical. She lives despair to the end, only to find hope. So this Sisyphean kind of search has always been something of hers. But right now, I see that she is waiting. That she's done. She doesn't want anymore. That's now, because you asked about now. And when this happened in the film, this is where I stopped also. I felt I had to stop recording because it was the face on the screen just kind of told me, okay, this is where you stop. You cannot go on anymore because she is disappearing from and the film is not about dying at all.
What's the story of Nazareth? How come that a lot of important Palestinian filmmakers were born in that city? Mishra Khleifi, Eli Suleiman, Maha Haj, you, Hassan Abu, Hani Abu. What's the story? Why?
I don't know. I'm from Nazareth Elite, which is called right now Nafa Galil, so I'm a settler. I don't know basically, but I think it's the infatuation with cinema began at the same time with Hani and Eli and Michel Khleifi. That was a generation. It was through Rashid Mashharawi also. And each of them, actually they started when they were living abroad. They were not living in Nazareth. I don't know if there's something from, I don't know actually how to answer that. Maybe it's just coincidence, or maybe it's the air we breathe. Really, it's just, I think it's coincidence because once you have one director or one generation of directors, it's easier for the next generation to come. And that's just it. I don't think there was like a historical moment of continuation of Palestinian cinema anyway, because Palestinian cinema was interrupted for a long time and it returned with those films.
And what is the story of Palestinian women filmmakers? It seems that they're really flourishing. A lot of Palestinian women filmmakers are entering the scene. I mean, there are some who are more veteran, like Ibtisam Marana or Anna-Marie Jassir. You, Maisun Hamoud, Maha Haj, Aida Tadan. It's amazing what's happening.
Women are starting to speak out, apparently, in the entire world, not just us. But I don't see myself as one gender, to tell you the truth. I don't always wake up feeling like a woman and that I should be doing woman thing, and my role is to present women issues. I think that my grandmother also in this film she's more Mussolini than her brother sometimes. She's more fascist and racist than anybody that you see. I think that it's good that this is starting to happen, that there are more female filmmakers, because it's, for me, more interesting the language of women to see in film, because men tend to repeat themselves a lot and tend to do the same thing. I'm sorry, I apologize, I didn't mean to offend anybody, but in general, men tend to have this repetition of style until they grow older, and then like it becomes like old horses kind. I'm seeing more films by women and I get more intrigued because they are very able to to be varied in their style and in the subjects they pick, and I think we all have something in common. We have suffered the same thing in our history, in our genes, and in our daily life, and I don't think it's a place like it's against another gender or something like that. It should have been this way since forever, but our language is not always accepted because it doesn't go according to some sort of we don't go according to reference, that we should be making about a film about this, then we should prove this, and this is why we would really want your money and want to make the film. This is not how I went through with that, and I know many people who didn't. It depends if you're commercial or if your ideas are commercial or not. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, and which way you decide to go, or which platform do you want to work. You want to work in the hierarchy of being on top of everything and everybody is beneath you. This is not the way how I want to work. I prefer that to see everybody works with me as part of my team, so we become a team director together. And this is like the way of many other films, like Japanese films. But it's this over here. It's so competitive that even when women are in those places, they kind of get also very competitive among each other. And the flow, I don't think it still exists at cinema. There are directors who are Palestinian, women directors who are Palestinian. We don't yet have any establishing of an entirety of a cinema or something like that. And that's a shame for me when I think about it, because we don't share ideas. This is not a place for continuation, so we remain like a solo Robinson Crusoe working alone until you prove yourself with audiences or something.
Any questions from the audience? Okay, so there and then Dori.
Can you just elaborate about why you decided to finish with the phone call to the radio station, which is a great scene, but why did you pick that to be the end?
Well, the structuring of the film, and thank you for your question and for asking about, I like talking about the film more than myself or the surrounding of it. Okay, the question, this scene was actually one of the first scenes I made before we started editing, and it was like, I cut it because when I filmed it, it was filmed like a scene, so I cut it in a certain way. We had no idea that it's going to fall on the end of the scene. When me and Alex worked together, we tried so many structures together, but then we realized that if we put it in the beginning, it's great. If we put it in the middle, it's great. But once we had an entire film and we had to finish it with something, suddenly your material comes in front of you and it tells you what to do. If you're not too much of a control freak and you don't want to take over your film and dictate the viewer what to think, what to feel all the time, then it was quite open. And then when it appeared back in the film, it felt right to put it right there. And then because it sums up her entire character as well. It's like this horoscope reader. It sums up her entire existence to her. And it was brilliant to finish the film with her in a laugh and after this entire being with her all the time. It's just, for me, it felt like a brilliant scene to go out of the film and leave the space for the viewers with something good happening as well.
I think it also puts the issue of identity like in a nutshell, that you have the ID that has so many missing parts, and then you have the horoscope reader who doesn't even know her but can give a precise account of her.
Yes.
That's very nice, thank you.
Yes, true. Thank you.
Dori?
Thank you. It's such a beautiful, intimate film. So I'm kind of curious about a few filmmaking decisions and filming in this very intimate space. And the only time she really looks in the camera or at you is when Kavita looks at
Kavita, yes.
Yeah, Kavita. So kind of how did you work with she sort of never acknowledges it. That's one question. And also the decision to separate the sound, so we never see her act. It's all voiceover.
Yes.
And so where did that come in the process, or was that from the beginning? Or I think it really adds to the intimacy, but it's perhaps not the first thing that would come to mind in being in such a small space.
So the question of the voiceover and the first one of how she...
Yeah.
Okay, so I go to the voiceover first. The voiceover is not taken from footage with her. Very little of it is. What I was doing, and that was intuitively done, because first filming in this space, when I began, the materials that you see here, began from a year after I have started. But the moment I put a camera in front of her, she would refer to me as her grandchild all the time. And she would curse the camera sometimes, move it. It has no place in the house. So a year after, I brought a very simple half-toy camera, and this is why you get this quality. It was a very simple camera that doesn't take much of the space, that I can put on objects in the house and film her from the point of view of her own objects, and this also fit the film as an idea. The voiceover was not taken from those. The voiceover were when I go to her bed at night and I remain with her until she goes to sleep, just to talk all the time. So all our talks were recorded on a separate recorder, voice recorder. And the more I heard them, the more I heard that there was this kind of effect of stream of consciousness effect. Whatever happens in her mind, she tells about it, and it's very spontaneous. And I never asked her what happened there and what happened. Just talking about stuff, about love life, about men, like you would talk with anybody who's female and who knows how to get into this, like your female grandmother, like if you have a grandmother and you have this kind of talk with her. And then she started telling me things about the past that I didn't know before, like that she was 3 times engaged, and this was, and she didn't want any of them, and then she got to marry my grandfather, who she never loved. So everything that was a revelation started to happen during, and I decided to use them as her voiceover instead of. I didn't want to interrupt her process. I wanted to, as much as possible, try to show what did it mean to grow older in this house alone with all the objects. I try to be disappearing when I'm filming as much as possible. I asked her a few times not to look at me, but then I noticed that her look on the camera was so piercing, so strong, that actually I wanted it. So I stopped telling her what to do. So there were many times she, like that scene where she looks at me after she when she's crying, after she lets Kavita go. She was crying and she was looking at me. And for me, like when I saw this scene in front of me, it was very touching because it was the very idea not to go on zoom in on her face and try to show the drama. The drama existed even from a long shot, and yeah, so, and I achieved that with her because of why I'm there without a crew. I'm filming alone, and she can think a lot of things about what I'm doing and ask me, and she will engage. But after a year, it becomes like another vase in the house, you know. So she wouldn't look at it, and she's also a little bit of a performer. Like it's as if she's an actress who knows where to look, or knows that this is. And I think that's a moment you get to capture. Sometimes it's like this. It's just everybody sits in the right place and starts saying the right thing at the right time. Even better than a fiction written film.
A few thoughts, maybe continuing, because it's so multi-layered, and that's the beauty of it. It's not just the voiceover. It's building a whole other layers that bring tension of sounds, of the sound of the street, of the honks, that really bring to life where she is, and this condensity of a place also. Yes. And her hearing aid, how she hears the world or not, all these little elements that are pretty amazing. It's beautifully made, really, all of it. So I would like to maybe just, it interests me how you reached it and how you made it, the layers of different sounds, and the thoughts behind it and how it was made. And the second thing, because of this intimacy, I guess for me, when I look at it, I say maybe there are moments I sit, and as you said, they're saying all kinds of things, and she's your grandmother. Were there places that you held back when you were in the editing room, or later, or
Yes.
Thinking about, and what were they? And thinking about maybe your other family, your mother, your parents, your grandmother, and how did they respond to it?
Yes.
Sorry, a lot of.
Yeah, it's an important question.
Do you hear her?
Do you hear me? Do I need this? You hear me? We hear you. Okay. Okay. So the issue of the sound, it's very hard to, like, when I spend years working with her, and it's very hard to come as close as to understand what the other person is going through at this stage in her life. Very, very hard, very pretentious to try to, act as if we do. In my sound work with Mikhail Gorevich, who's a brilliant sound designer, and it was really fun working with him because he's a person that you can really open all your insecurities in front, and we tried a lot of stuff. The thing was with the hearing device, for example, is that I very much tried to understand from him what she hears when there's a lot of noise, when there's one person who is speaking, and then he was really researching that, what kind of waves go through what becomes distortion, and this was very important because I use the medium in order to also express her inner world, and it's all about her inner world. In terms of the sound for me was it was like a trip after the editing session. It was beautiful the way we worked on the sound. it gave a lot of ideas. But is there something in the film that, yes, there is one scene in the film that I'm still edgy about, but we had to use it, and I understand its importance. It's the scene where my uncle screams at her. I get very hurt seeing that, and there was me and the editor Alex. We were like fighting about it all the time. But then I understand also, because this was something. If I want to hide in order not to embarrass the family, then there is no problem, because Mbadda doesn't care about being embarrassed at all. I asked him, I showed him, he's fine with it. I get embarrassed because of her age, but this used to happen a lot. Okay, and this is one thing that we also tend to do as people when we get agitated from older people because they don't hear us. Because so it was. There is also a kind of a child still at her bed. Still, that this childish behavior exists in every other way. So if it's because a documentary, like you would judge a documentary seeing this scene, but you wouldn't judge a fiction film seeing this scene. So then we decided, because we treated it as a film, we didn't care if it's called documentary or fiction. Being a film, this scene had a role in showing us something, in opening a door to the world of how she thinks and feels about men. So this was it. So we used it. But am I okay with everything? No. Not everything.
The response of your family?
Well, the response of my family was great. Maybe my mother was more scared of what people would think in Nazareth, but since I don't care, since my grandmother doesn't care, neither does my uncle, nobody cares. So when we showed it in Nazareth, actually people loved it, and they didn't have any kind, like the older woman would say, "Asa" in the audience, like when that happened. But it's okay, it's also a reaction, and I also respect the fact that people see it as too harsh of a scene. It's true. It is what it is. It's like the one with the I heard many Israelis saying, "This is Shoah. This is Shoah. Remove it." Okay, I'm not gonna remove it because she's saying something. It's expressing her entirety. This thing. I used to see it every day in my life that she does it, and she doesn't feel anything. She doesn't feel any pain. Her skin lost the ability to have pain against the wax. So if we feel pain, it's because we're projecting our own feelings on whatever we're seeing. But I know it's hard, some scenes are hard to swallow. Maybe.
One last question?
It could be a comment, you don't have to ask me questions.
So I have a little one. In the middle of the film, when I first saw the film, I saw actually she died. Yes, there is this moment when everything is still, even the washing machine is still everything, right? So, and then suddenly the washing machine starts to work, and I thought it's so amazing. I don't know, maybe I was, but for me it was okay. She's like coming back to life, right? Like Phoenix.
Yes.
In a way, yes. There was this stillness, the despair. She's very sick, and
Yes.
suddenly she. That's what you meant by that? Like she's
Actually,
back to life?
when I shot this scene, she was being hospitalized after breaking her thigh, and this was the hit that would change everything in her life. So there was like a month or two, I think, she was in rehabilitation, and I would go to the house with my camera and sit alone. And there was this one day that the sun was going behind the sun was coming and going. Suddenly you have light coming in, light going out, and I was just feeling the notion of her loss maybe more at any other part in the film, because she really didn't exist in the house, and it felt very weird. And this was the visuals that later were used for that scenes. Yeah, it was felt at the place, and in the film. It's also a kind of an end of a term, because after this happens, then she is under the mercy of helpers. And this is like when the bad news starts. So this also, when she despairs, like that's some sort of death in her own terms, or in the way we understand her as well, or I understand her.
So what is this washing machine which
This
starts
is
by itself as
This
if
is like funny little trick I tried that we kept, like because we laughed about it, because we wanted practically do whatever we want with this documentary. There was no limits in documentary. You can edit however you want, you can cheat however you want, And the more you cheat, the more truthful you are towards your character. That's just the thing. That's the strangest thing about it, is that you're telling her truth by cheating. Actually, by being truthful, it becomes such a melancholic and heavy film. And we were trying that too, but no, actually it was being like her with her object. We played the same thing with the scenes, basically.
Thank you.
Thank you.